So I want to give a demonstration and give you an idea of what is expected for your final project. And so this is the final project for, yes, the balance and composition unit, but it's also really taking ideas from the color unit and everything else we've learned in this course to this point. There are going to be some restrictions, some requirements, but there's also going to be a lot of opportunities for you to stretch your creative wings and to have a lot of things in your capacity to develop. And so materials, for example, is something that is going to be up to you. And so there's going to be a requirement that the materials have to have color to them, but don't think you have to choose one material either. You can really mix things, experiment, and any experiments that you might have or any other work that you have, make sure that you turn all of that material in. Anything that can show thought process or experimentation is really going to work to your advantage, and so I encourage that to a high degree. Some of the requirements that are for this project is that you're going to be working from observation, not from a photograph. And so this is a huge challenge for artists to not work from a photograph. The reason why it's such an important skill to learn as an artist as we develop in drawing is that the way we interpret the world is going to be very differently than interpreting a photograph. A photograph flattens things out. It's going to appear to be flat. And so if you're working from that as a source, your drawings are also going to have a level of flatness compared to working directly from observation. Now, of course, working from observation, it's going to impose its own challenges, and I think there's going to be more for you to gain through the process. So here's all the items I have out for the project I'm going to be working on. I have out my dining room table, so I have a very large piece of paper. Your requirement is going to be working minimally from a 9 by 12 or equivalent measurement, and you're welcome to work much larger. For color, I decided I'm going to work with watercolor. These are the watercolor trays that we have in the classroom. Obviously, there's very different types of watercolors one can work with. And I might also work with pen and ink, and I have a pencil there. And I have some things out that I may or may not use. I decided for my still life, I'm going to work from a still life. So from observation, these are the items that I had in the kitchen that I decided to bring out. I thought it'd be best to bring out everything and then select and see what I want to work with and sort of refine that down. So I think one of the most difficult things to do when you're working with all these materials is to sort of figure out a composition that's going to be interesting in front of you. And so this actually was one of the longer parts of this process for me, was taking all of these items, figuring out what's working together, what's not, putting it all together. And then once I feel like I have a couple of things, I started doing some compositional sketches. You're going to be required to do 3, but you can do many more than that. I'm sort of moving the items around, figuring them out, seeing different sort of compositions. This is, for me, always a difficult process, and you can see me holding up my hands, and I'm sort of creating a little rectangle. What that does is that allows me to give the format of the picture frame. And so once I have things pretty well refined, I'm then going to start doing more compositional sketches. And so this here is what you would be turning in. I didn't add value to them. If you want to, go ahead. These are in pen because they pick up on the camera a little bit better. If you want to use any other materials, you are certainly welcome to. There is no size requirement for these. They are at whatever size that you would want them to be. But this would count as preliminary work and is really going to give you a good sense of composition from the start. You also notice that I'm not just drawing the elements floating in the page. I'm drawing the rectangles around the images that are representing the page edges. And so as far as the requirements, make sure that you do submit at least 3 thumbnail sketches that are considering different compositions, and that you're working within the requirement of a 9 by 12, although you may work at a much larger size. So you can see this is pretty much my final composition. I might change things otherwise, but I really like this balance of the yellow, of the olive oil and the lemon, and then also the sort of reddish shapes from the red onion. And so I'm sort of having those two colors balance things out. And so I got rid of a lot of those other things that I had in the composition. A lot of traditional watercolors will work from pencil first, which is what I did. I sort of traced out the elements, really got the proportions where I wanted them to be. And then I started really going back in here and developing it further with watercolor. And so I essentially attached the colors first, is that I really let the colors go in and get the broad color separation I have here. I'm not worried about any details. I'm not really even worried about creating form or anything. I'm just sort of blocking in the main composition of the elements. And as soon as I had everything there where I wanted it to be, I sort of let it dry. And then I was able to come back in here and start working with more details. This gives me a more layered effect. I start slowly introducing details in the onion layers, in the lemon, and I start slowly building up value. You can see that I sped this up quite a bit, and this took me quite a bit of time. This doesn't seem like a really overly complicated sketch, but it still took me probably, once I had everything in place, and once I had it drawn out and the compositions figured out, I still think it took me probably about 40 minutes to draw, and I don't really think I draw that slowly either. And so here's my finished drawing. I think it is somewhat successful. I'm sort of pleased with it. I think it was a great experience, great practice. I still enjoy working from observation much. And when I was looking at this, I started playing around with this idea of, well, I don't think the color scheme, it was sort of analogous all on one side, and I thought it was sort of working. And then I decided digitally what would happen if that background table color was a blue. And so the idea that making it a unsaturated blue might create this triadic primary color scheme of red, yellow, and blue, and then have a more balanced composition. And so yes, I changed it digitally, and yes, that's cheating, but I think that version is better, stronger than the other one that I produced. And so just to recap, make sure you look at this. I don't need to reiterate it. You can hit the pause button and make sure that you are submitting all of that. And also make sure that you submit the answers to the following questions, and that this is going to be something that you're going to turn in writing along with your final project.